Well, it looks like we were right about Zach Bryan. It looks like we called it, because for the past 3 years, there has been no buzzier performer in our corner of kind of the indie country internet than Mr. Zachary Lane Bryan. Ever since some little grainy video of a sweaty Navy man playing a song called Condemned went viral on Twitter of all places, we've just kind of had this sneaking suspicion that Mr. Zach Bryan is meant for big things. We've all watched this young Oklahoma man post video after video on front porches, on back porches, in barns, at bonfires, and sing these passionate, brooding, intense songs that are sometimes sweet and sometimes really somber, but always sort of poetically and beautifully written. And we saw this guy who had lost his mother release this raw coping mechanism of an album called Deanne back in 2019, and it became something of sort of a viral phenomenon in the independent songwriting world. And I can honestly say I have never seen a groundswell of fandom around someone the way Zach Bryan has experienced. And we've seen innumerable young people on TikTok and stuff just following these songs, screaming back every word of these choruses, which are so spare and have none of the bells and whistles of most mainstream music. But even with all that evidence of potential, I do feel there has still been a question on the table around Zach Bryan. And that was whether he could be a mainstream force, or if the sad boys of the internet had just found their poet laureate, and it was nothing more than that. Well, American Heartbreak has now dropped. It's Zach's first album with a major label. It is smashing streaming records right out of the gate, and it seems pretty clear and pretty resoundingly answered that yes, Zach Bryan can be a mainstream star. And in fact, he already is. I mean, I think this is going to be one of the albums of the year, and probably one of the albums of my lifetime. I just haven't seen a rise and an explosion of just pure passion with no real radio support, with no big, huge marketing plan like I have for Zach Bryan. And for those of us who have been around from the beginning, it's so thrilling to see. Back in 2019, I kind of had my own little breakout moment with this channel getting a little more popular. I took some meetings in Nashville at the time from people that wanted to work with me, and every executive I spoke to asked, hey, who's really on your radar? Who's up and coming right now? And I'd say Zach Bryan. Well, who's he with? No one. He's independent. Well, does he have a radio single? No. Well, is he just online? Yeah, that's the point. And they just didn't get it. They didn't get it. And I was just in Nashville last week, and people were all talking about Zach Bryan because this album was breaking records. And the response was different. A lot of people in Nashville were like, well, he's not really independent. Oh, well, blah, 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 kind of writing off his success. And I'm like, no, no, no. Don't be salty that you missed the phenomenon that was happening right in front of your eyes, because it is a phenomenon.
The masses scream the lyrics of a messed up kid.
So if you've never heard of Zach Bryan, here's just like your 5-second bio. He was a guy from Oklahoma. He was in the Navy. He lost his mother, and he wrote this album named after her called Deanne. A real spare, almost just sounds like acoustic demos, songs like Godspeed that were about a young man trying to process life. The way this was released is really notable because these were really lo-fi productions with just sort of shaky camera videos that were posted on YouTube, racking up hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views. After that, he released another album called Elizabeth, which was similarly a kind of slapdash production. He recorded in a barn with his friends. It's not the most professional recording, but it has soul. After that came an EP called Quiet Heavy Dreams that Zach recorded with Eddie Spear, who is a producer known for working with Dave Cobb. This had a lot more polished of a sound, and also Zach playing with storytelling a little more, telling kind of tales of loggers that are working for $14 an hour rather than just his own tales. And all the while, there's just been a crescendo of momentum. Zach finished his time with the Navy after what had to be an overwhelming couple years of still doing that job and trying to be like a famous musician on the side. He signed a deal with Warner Records. That's not the same as Warner Music Nashville. They're going to be based out of California rather than being based out of Nashville. And so it is a major, but within the country world, it's not really a major. It's kind of inside baseball. He's been playing sold out shows in any city that he goes to. He made his debut at the Opry. He just opened for Luke Combs' first stadium show in Denver. And now we have the record-breaking release of American Heartbreak. And that leaves out a lot, but that's the Cliff's Notes of how we got to here. And of course, all along the way, there's been little ups and downs. There's a lot of people that are like,
this guy's just trying to copy Tyler Childers.
Which I think he's definitely inspired by Tyler Childers. He talks about singing Tyler Childers in his songs, but I certainly look at him as a very different artist. And also, we love Tyler Childers, so why not be inspired by Tyler Childers? Hello. But in the words of Taylor Swift, people throw rocks at things that shine, and that is going to be the first of many Taylor Swift references in this video. Fair warning. But this is not a marketing story. I really want to base this video around American Heartbreak, this new album, this opus of an album, because it's 34 songs long. It's over 2 hours long. There's a lot to talk about, and it's hard to synthesize, which is why you're getting this review a week late. I had to process a lot.
Heading down the road, I guess another.
I think the only place to start a discussion of American Heartbreak is with the simple fact that it's great. And why is it great? Because it's so singular. It's kind of poetic and strange. It's it's way too long, but it's like, that's kind of part of it. It's such an unusual release. Every song on here was written only by Zach, and you get all of the consistency and contradiction that comes from a single person's perspective. Like, sometimes when you're a country fan, you got to learn to kind of cock your head and appreciate that a group of writers have managed to replicate a formula in a slightly new way that will make a song a radio hit. It's like, wow, that followed the kind of predictable structure of the song, but it had just 1 or 2 details that made it feel slightly alive, and you're like, huh, I kind of liked that. But almost like a meat eater that is convincing themselves that they like Beyond Burger, when you bite into the real thing, you're just like, oh my gosh. And if you're a fan of just honest expression from an individual songwriter, I mean, wow. This is such a cool and valuable album. There's a lot of things about it that make it feel really classic to me. The title, especially all small on the cover, American Heartbreak, that just feels so grand, kind of epic. The image that's on the cover is gorgeous and kind of lo-fi. All the kind of visuals around Zach are always very lo-fi, but the blur in this, the kind of whimsy of a jump, really captures, I think, kind of some of the playful spirit, but also lonesome spirit of a lot of these songs. Musically, these songs are really mostly built around guitar. You've usually got a strumming acoustic guitar. Sometimes you get some electric sounds, bass, drum on some of the songs. We've got steel and fiddle occasionally going through this. You've got harmonica. You've got a lot of the sonic textures of country music, although it kind of veers more into like a heartland rock feel. Definitely, whenever I say heartland, I think of Springsteen a little bit, and you can totally hear that. I would say almost like Cleopatra era Lumineers.
I was Cleopatra.
It's kind of this like driving rock feel, but it's a more stripped back production.
Johnny's in the drive and he's drinking again. Rough crowd downtown.
And I feel like Eddie Spear, and there's production credits on here by Louis Nice, Ryan Hadlock as well. But it's mostly Eddie Spears' production, and I think he does a great and tasteful job just letting the songs feel a bit rambunctious. So many of them start with 1, 2, 3, 4, and they kind of have this jaunty feel to them. But the main instrument that works in Zach Bryan's favor is his voice. It's raspy, it's yelpy, it can be so, like, he's such an animated singer. There's another way that he reminds me of Taylor Swift. He should get a lot of credit for his enunciation. Sometimes he says things with just a roar, and the dynamics that creates is so exciting.
Just learn to walk away.
And that is what Eddie lets shine. I love when a producer just lets a voice shine, and they're not always trying to make the music compete with it. Because what has worked for Zach is him and his guitar and a crappy little iPhone vid. In this case, it's just polished up a little bit, so regular audiences would be a little more willing to listen. As far as the length, yeah, this album is 34 songs.
Do you even know how many songs that is? That's more songs than this album.
Here's like my lyric sheet. I've been highlighting up a storm and just trying to like figure out what this album is about. And I'm sort of noted for not liking super long albums. I said it about Morgan Wallen's Dangerous, said it about Eric Church's Triple album, and you know, I gotta keep the same energy and be consistent, where I think because I am not just a music fan, but I try to be an ambassador for music, I know how there are some normal listeners that will message me and be like, I just can't. I can't jump into that, which I get because like that's why I've never seen The Aviator. I'm like, I'm not sitting down for 3 hours and watching The Aviator. And so I do think it is probably impractically long for a lot of people, but there's not many duds here. It does, I think, start to get a little bit repetitive sonically, especially if you're listening all the way through. But I don't think any of the songs are just total misfires at all. I would maybe cut like 5, but I mean, that's still a pretty good batting average. There's my, I have to say it. Gotta say, I always feel bad saying anything negative about people that have been on the channel before, and I have an old interview with Zach, but if you're not saying something rude, you're just doing PR. But within those 34 songs, there are some gems, and there are some really consistent themes that run through this record.
Times I've let go. Love was just an ocean out there.
The main theme I noticed is just the recklessness of youth. All through this album, people are screaming at the skies. On Heavy Eyes, there's 2 kids drunk in the back of a Bronco. On Younger Years, they're getting high until they cry and enjoying all the pain of younger years. I mean, what a strange and cool lyric. On Whiskey Fever, the main character is on a drunken bender through the song that leads to his arrest, that leads to him ultimately having to go off to war instead of paying any more time. And he still just wants to get drunk even when he's over there. On the sober side of Sorry, you almost get this woozy dream of wildflowers and neck tattoos and cigarettes and teeth as he's sort of piecing together maybe the regrets of the night before. You get that recklessness and that machismo on songs like Open the Gate too, where you've got a main character whose father died as a cowboy, and yet he's trying to prove his manhood by riding at a rodeo. And at the end of the song, you find out he died too, but he hopes his son will continue on the tradition. Like it's reckless and manly and dumb in a way. And if it sounds like a Wetzel album in this way, it's really not. It's a lot more hopeful. I think that's what makes Zach's writing interesting. It's like hope and regret all shook up in a mason jar. And you get, I want to be a crazy guy tonight, and you get, I'm on the sober side of Sorry, and that's not where you want to be. A song like Darling captures both perfectly. That's one of my favorite songs on the whole record. He wants someone to be his darling and to hold him in the moments when he's at his lowest.
Let me have my bloody knuckles, all my nights in dark cold trouble.
He talks about getting kicked out of a hotel and wondering if his mom is still proud of him, and yet the backdrop of this is that when he wakes up, this woman will still be by his side. She'll still be his darling.
When I was through, I was hoping you might wait for me.
And so, man, there's something very redemptive about the way that he writes. He's not just a self-loather. He's also a hoper, and I think that is a key element in great songwriting. It's something that BJ Barham from American Aquarium has always done so well. And so even though Zach calls himself on this album damaged, he calls himself a sickness, he calls himself calloused, he says repression is his heaven, like he's such a sad boy. You get this flip side where he sees the good in other people too. And it makes for compelling writing. And that redemptive thing I'm talking about is really present on a song like Oklahoma City, where he's encouraging a friend that has kind of been in some rough and rowdy ways. Like, you can always find your way back home. And there's this theme of home, of this like kind of haven, this resting place on his dreams on a song like The Outskirts, where he's thinking about how he just wants this nice little place where he can mow the lawn. And then he has a whole image of a home that is so welcoming and accommodating in this spoken word poem called The Road I Know at the very end of the album. And so, I don't know, all the dualities on this album of recklessness and wild living, but calmness and patience and home, they're all there. Obviously, on an album called American Heartbreak, there's going to be songs that deal with heartbreak and the end of a relationship, and I don't want to get gossipy. Y'all can put 2 and 2 together. I mean, Zach's last album, Elizabeth, they don't even list it on his website, and you can tell that he has been through a broken relationship. And although I will say, he also mentions in his public letter that not all of these songs, and a lot of them in fact, are not inspired by his own life. He's telling other people's stories. It reminds me, again, of Taylor Swift, something she wrote ahead of her Reputation album. She said, when this album comes out, gossip blogs will scour the lyrics for the men they can attribute to each song, as if the inspiration for music is as simple and basic as a paternity test. There will be slideshows of photos backing up each incorrect theory, because it's 2017, and if you didn't see a picture of it, it couldn't have happened, right? Let me say it again, louder for those in the back. We think we know someone, but the truth is that we only know the version of them they have chosen to show us. There will be no further explanation. There will just be reputation. So there's my caveat to my former statement. We only know the version of us someone shows, but it seems like necessary context. Sometimes on these Heartbreak songs, he's fairly accusatory. Stuff like 68 Fastback is him imagining himself as a car that has been used for parts and kind of ripped out, and he's felt deceived. Other times, and this is probably more common, he points the finger at himself as someone that just needs to be on the run and on the go. And on From Austin, he says, I wish I had concrete shoes that would kind of essentially keep me in one place, but this is who I am. I keep it moving, and you deserve something better than that. It's very Miranda Lambert-y theme there. Very much like her song Vice.
Maybe I'm addicted to goodbyes.
There's also a subtle rebuke to the music industry going on through a lot of this album. You hear it in little glimmers on songs like Highway Boys, where he talks about going and playing at the Ryman for the first time and has like a bit of a chip on his shoulder toward the people that doubted him. He says in that song that they finally found out the hard way that this sound I got is mine. And he says he's doing his best to keep truth in songs, kind of implying that there's a lot of people that would have wanted him to sell out or change his sound. On Cold Damn Vampires, he calls the business folks in the industry vampires that want to suck you dry and remove the life and the blood from you as they build an empire on things that they've taken from you.
Never let him speak, and don't let him tell a lie.
But probably the most popular industry jab on this album is the song If She Wants a Cowboy, which I think works on so many different levels. Absolutely one of my favorite tracks on the whole record. In this song, he is chasing after a girl that wants a cowboy, but the problem is he's not really a cowboy. So he changes everything about himself and starts roping and riding and trying to be a cowboy, and it's this silly lyric where he's saying,
If she wants a cowboy, I'll cowboy the best.
He turns it into a verb. But as it turns out, she doesn't really want a real cowboy. She wants someone a little more Nashville, a little more city. And so he changes himself again and says, if she wants Nashville, I'll Nashville the best. And as he says that, this auto-tune effect comes on, almost like a little bit of a T-Pain moment.
If she wants Nashville, I'll Nashville the best.
And he sings it that way into the final chorus of the song. And so it's this kind of light indictment of maybe the fake cowboy posturing that might happen in Nashville. And it's so smart. I love when, I always say this, music should be onomatopoetic. I love when music reflects the words that it's saying. And here's a great example. It's like it perfectly tells the story musically that's also being told in its words. And it's also kind of a cool song without any of that about how changing for somebody probably isn't gonna work.
Something in the orange tells me we're not done.
There's definitely stylistic through lines in Zach's writing as well. He has such a classic taste in kind of his imagery of like these classic Americana images that have you feeling like you're driving west on Route 66. The Levi jean jackets, the Broncos, the cigarettes in mouth, the flasks and combs have you feeling like, I don't know, James Dean? It's a little bit beatnik. And beatnik is probably the right term because Zach is so poetic by nature. He likes alliteration. Sometimes he'll say something like pulling pints of pesky Pendleton. Sometimes he'll talk about change the chains that chained you down. Sometimes he'll do sort of internal rhyming within a single line of, I'll ask for forgiveness with God as my witness, that feel almost like a limerick. And they just show some personality and kind of his own style. And then Zach really likes the sky, specifically the sun. I think over half of these songs probably mention a sunrise or a sunset or the cresting sun that's putting silver in the sky. I mean, Zach loves the sun so much that the one song he didn't write on this album is a cover of You Are My Sunshine.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine.
I mean, Something in the Orange is about staring into the orange at dusk. There is screaming into red skies. There's just a lot of sun imagery. Maybe it's overused. But it also kind of works. Like, this whole album is about being a confused young man wondering, who God is, who you are, where you are to be, if you're heartbroken or if you're alive, and kind of looking at the sky just confused. 21 Pilots have this song from like a decade ago called Screen, and it has a line in it that's always stuck with me where he says, "Some of us have a really hard time getting through this life, so excuse us while we sing to the sky." And maybe Zach is a little bit similar.
But it's perfect for a night like tonight.
The more I thought about it, the more it made sense to me that Zach would really like these moments of dusk and dawn, sunrises and sunsets, because I think something that goes through all of his writing is this momentary nature of things. He really likes to freeze frame a moment and remember it. Like, I listened to this album 4 or 5 times and was trying to think, how do I synthesize this? Who is Zach Bryan? He's so many things on this album all at once. And sometimes a song, you just hear it differently. And I feel like for me, the cornerstone that unlocked everything was the song Right Now, The Best.
And I love you for who you are right now, the best.
Because in the chorus of that song, he says something I've never really heard before. The you of right now is the best. Now, I've heard people say, I love you for who you are. I love you for who you're becoming. I love what you've been through. But it's such an unusual thought to say, I love you for who you are right now. The embrace of the very moment that you're in, rejecting the reminiscing, rejecting the future forecasting, and instead seeing someone as they are right then, seeing your life as it is right then. That's not something that's easy to do. That requires a strange observational ability, an ability to have gratitude that cuts through the fury of emotions going through your head and allows you to appreciate the moment. But that's what Zach's so good at. Like, I was excited when this clicked, because I'm like, this is what you do when you're writing. You just freeze. It's like you're in that special fashion camera on E! News, or you're going into Raven's eyeball on That's So Raven, or I don't know, a Polaroid picture. That's probably a more normal image. Or a snow globe. A snow globe. Chilly, reflective, just a moment captured in time. This album is all snow globes. It's all these beautiful little stories that just set you in a scene, and then they get shaken up, and all the glitter and snow goes everywhere, and it's all super pretty, and you have these little self-contained stories, like Billy Stay, where Zach is singing as an old lady, almost the way Holly Williams does on Waiting on June, but with her grandfather. And this woman just wants Billy, her husband that's dying with Alzheimer's, to just stay for a little while, to stay for that little moment. You get songs like Younger Years, where he just wants to remember this image of a Levi Jean Queen. And on the song Ninth Cloud, he talks about how them Christians are talking too often of coffins. We're dwelling on death too much, but what I feel right now is this euphoric feeling of being on the ninth cloud, and he just wants to remember that moment. And that, again, is where Zach's writing can remind me of Taylor Swift's. And I say that as a huge compliment. If you're not, into Taylor Swift's writing, do you like songwriting? I remember when Vanity Fair reviewed the album Red, they mentioned that she had an ability to reminisce about things she was currently experiencing, and how it's unusual for a 22-year-old to write "It's miserable and magical" when they are 22, because really, you don't feel the magic of it until you get older and you remember, man, that was a special time. And I think Zach shares that same songwriting trait. Maybe it's a blessing, maybe it's a curse, of being able to see life as it is in all its chaos for what it is, the good and the bad, and to love what it is right now. In that way, when Zach has those songwriting moments, he's like this suspended soul that is existing observationally outside of time, looking at himself and reflecting honestly about the moment he is in. So that's my kind of attempt to cull some conversation of this album into one video. I can think of 10 songs right now that I didn't even mention, but it's 34 songs long. What are you going to do? Part of me wants to do a whole different video where I just talk about each song one by one. I'm really pumped for Zach, and I'm pumped that so many people are getting to enjoy this music. If you are completely intimidated by how long this album is, well then, what are you doing watching this video? Because I'm sure it's like 40 minutes long. But here's a couple tracks to check out that I think you might like and might be an easy entry point. My favorite track on the whole album is probably Younger Years. It's got that reckless abandon and that joy and pain of Younger Years. And I love that whole bow, 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 like with the drums going. so catchy, so melodic. I think Something in the Orange is justifiably a huge hit. It's so haunting and powerful, and just the simplicity of the line. To you, I'm just a man, but to me, you're all I am. Where the hell am I supposed to go? That's iconic. She's Alright is a huge standout to me. If She Wants a Cowboy is probably the most playful and fun moment on the record. And I love the really playful steel. That's one of my favorite kind of musical moments on the song. I also love at the end of Tishomingo, there's a little bit of steel and you kind of take on this galloping feel about this song's about horses. But I love that musical moment as well. Tishomingo is the grower on the record for me. That's been my sleeper smash. I freaking love Tishomingo. Mine Again, about sort of reclaiming your own self and feeling like yourself. That song's really lovely. The final poem is great. Have I done 5 songs? If you only want to just start at one place on the record, I would say start at Younger Years and just go through Billy Stay. Oh, Billy Stay is really beautiful too. I would just say if you only wanted to do like a 12-track album or something, that chunk, Younger Years to Billy Stay, you can make that'll give you all the shades of Zach, and you can make up your mind. It's definitely my favorite section of the record. So those are my not at all short-winded thoughts on American Heartbreak, on Zach Bryan, on his rise, on this album, on his writing. I really like it. I feel like I can't even honestly grade Zach, just because at some point I probably overly internalized that moment that we did an interview years ago. It was just such a raw moment in my life. I wrote a whole post about this on Instagram. It just felt like we were in this kind of similar spot, and I've watched him really take off and admired how he has not lost what makes him special, but been able to scale it. And I haven't quite figured out how to do that. And so I feel like I'm such just like an open fanboy and don't have my normal critic hat on. I'm not going to rate this album. I mean, it is what it is. Like, I always try and tell you when I'm friendly with someone. I said it before I interviewed Brian Kelly and all these things. Like, we all got our biases, and I just think it's not like I'm freaking texting with Zach and we're best of friends, but I don't know. That's just that. I just admire him. So I don't know. I guess that's the end of the video. I'm just sitting here like, what else do I say? I'm talked out. So anyway, if you're new here, if you're new to the channel, I talk about country music. It's not all going to be independent people like Zach Bryan. I try to cover the mainstream and then show people, hey, there's also all this stuff happening outside the mainstream. So if you can stand it, I'm going to talk about a Carrie Underwood album, but I'm also going to talk about Zach Bryan. So if that sounds like something that you're kind of into, this might be a great channel for you. Hit subscribe, like this video, and please let me know your thoughts on American Heartbreak down below, on Zach's career, and whatever else you want to say. I love you guys, and I'll be back soon with more content.